Okay, good morning, everyone. So, after going through the most of the parts or most of the things related to the Constitution, right? So, very first, we have gone through the introduction of the Constitution. In fact, how the polity is governed, right, majorly by the Constitution and what it is, right? So that we have also looked in. Then we have directly jumped to the schedules of the Constitution, 12 different schedules. We have one by one gone through each of these schedules elements, what about it is. Then we have also considered the sources, right? The most of the provisions imported from which of the sources that we have considered, majorly 9 different countries' constitutions, and the prime skeleton of the Indian constitution is imported by the government of India's Act 1935. So this was about the source which we have considered. Later on, we have considered different parts and articles. So altogether, altogether, almost most of the highlights in the form of articles as well as article consisting parts we have considered. Right. So as you know, there are again 25 different parts, right, having of 22 numbers. So just quickly going through within couple of minutes through these articles or the parts. So part 1 is about union and its territory. The citizenship of India is in the part 2, right? Then the fundamental rights such as right to equality, right to freedom, against right against exploitation, right to right of freedom to the religion, right to cultural and educational rights, then right to the constitutional remedies. So altogether, these 7 different points we have considered, right, in the form of the rights, particularly fundamental rights, which is nothing but the part 3. Part 4 consisting the directive principles of the state policy. Then part 5, part 4A, which is nothing but about the fundamental duties. Then part 5, through which we have gone, which is related to union. Again, that has been divided into 5 different chapters, which were which are about the executive, right, completely related to the president. Second is of parliament, then legislative powers of the president, then union judiciary and controller and auditor general of India. So, which is of chapter 5. So these are the points of we can consider of part 5. Then part 6 is about the states, right, which we have considered in this particular part. Part 7 is of the again states, right, which are included in the first schedule, right, particularly part B of the first schedule. Part 8 we have about the union territories. The panchayats, the municipalities, and the cooperative societies are in the part 9, while 10A and 10B respectively. Right. Then, in the 9A and 9B. Part 10 is of the scheduled tribes and areas. Right. Anusachit Jati आणि आदिवासी विभाग. Sorry, अनुसूचित आणि Adivasi Vibhag, right, not caste. Then the part 11 is about the relations between the state and the union. Then the finance, property, contracts, and the suits is of nothing but the part 12. Part 13 is about the commerce and trade, right? Or we can consider again the intercourse within the India. Part 14 is about the services under the union and the states. Then part 14A is about the tribunals. Elections are in the part 15. The special provisions for a certain classes is nothing but the part 16. Part 17 is about official languages. Part 18 is about emergency provisions. Part 19 is about miscellaneous. Part 20 is about the constitution of amendment of the constitution. Keep in mind single article 368, right? I think I will emphasize on this particular in this particular session. Part 21 is about temporary, transitional, and special provisions. For example, 370. Then part 22, which is last, we have considered is about the short title and the commencement. So this is all about the different parts. Now, as you know, we have gone through that. Some of the schedules have been included later, right, which were not originally in the constitution. The same case is also about the some of the articles, some of the parts, right? Part A, B, if you consider. Then all these are known as the amendments, which are particularly called the constitutional amendments. Fine. Constitutional amendments. Now, you know, there is a separate article for this, but prior to that, right, what exactly the constitutional amendment that you should know, right? You know, you have a right, I mean, the power of parliament, right, to add uh, or cause a variation in any of the provisions, right? So that is about the constitutional amendment. For a while, just a minute. Okay, so I was talking about the constitutional amendment. So what is a constitutional amendment? That is necessary to know, or you should understand it. You know, the power of parliament to add, repeal, right, or cause variation in any of the provision of the constitution according to the procedure laid down for the purpose, right, which is known as constitutional amendment. Okay, I think there was one. There is some suggestion anyway. Right. So your question was, what is the constitutional amendment. This is a question. So how would you, let's say, explain it, describe it, or define it? So if you consider the power of parliament to add, repeal, or cause variation in any provision of the constitution, right? In any provision in the constitution. Now at this moment you should know, see, this is a procedure, right? And the complete procedure is laid down, right? You cannot unobey it or disobey it, and or whenever you want to go for the amendment, you have to follow a procedure, right? So this adding, repealing, or causing variation, right, in any of the provisions of the constitution in accordance with the procedure laid down for the purpose, right? For what purpose you are doing it, right? So that is, and in fact it is talking you about the article 368, right? And this is known as the constitutional amendment. Now, which is the article dealing with the constitutional amendment, right? So very factual question which you can consider, right? So which article deal with the constitutional amendment? You know, article 368, which is of part 20, right? At the time of studying, you should always look around, right? Additional things. Since question is only about article, so you may not be, or you may be providing certain notice to the part, right? But you should always, of the constitution deals with the constitutional amendment, right? Deals. So this will be the case. Now, in this particular case, the procedure of, what is the procedure of the constitutional amendment, right? So what procedure? So there must be some standard procedure, right? Yes, there is a procedure laid down by or in article 368. Then what about the introduction of the amendment, right? And you know where it should be beginning, right? So the proposed amendment, whatever the amendment you want to do, that proposed amendment begins in parliament, where it is introduced as a bill in either of the house of the parliament, right? Which can be introduced by the private member or a minister, right? It does not require any prior permission of the President of India, right? So proposed amendment begins in parliament, right? In any of the houses, right? That is Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. Fine. Then houses introduced as, this is the point, introduced as bill. Many a times you must have heard this word. Government is thinking to bring the bill. Government is trying to put a bill, right? Likewise. So these are initially each and every amendment is like a bill. But don't consider that each and every bill is nothing but the amendment. No, right? But whenever you want to do amendment, that will be initially in the form of bill. Fine. Then it can be introduced by a member of parliament or minister, right? And important thing, does not require prior permission, right? Does not require the prior permission of president, right, of India. Now, suppose anyone has put or introduced this bill in the parliament in either of the houses, then that bill must be passed, right? So what you can consider here, the passage of bill. Just by putting a bill is not sufficient. So passing of bill with the passing of bill will always require a special majority, right? So what the special majority, I think once a while I have also I have earlier mentioned this particular terminology. So a majority of the total membership of the house, and yes, thank you Karthik, and the yes, the majority of the membership of the house and a majority of not less than 2/3, right? Not merely only 2/3. It can be anything greater than 2/3, but it should not be less than 2/3 of the members, right, present for the voting. Because for each of these passing of bill, 2/3 majority at least required, right? And that is called requires special majority. See, in this in this particular case, question can be asked about this particular point, because there are three types of amendments which we can consider, right? So we will be seeing that part here. I mention you a simple majority, special majority, and a special majority of the parliament, and the ratification of half of the states. Ratification, validation by half of the states, or agreeing to be acted like that. म्हणजे फक्त पार्लमेंटची मेजॉरिटी असून चालत नाही, देशातल्या अर्ध्या कमी at least half of the states must also agree it or pass that particular bill, right? So these are the three different kinds of majorities. But this question can be asked about to pass a bill in the parliament, what kind of majority is required. So it is always special majority, right? Not either simple or by the special by the parliament and half of the states, right? So this is the most important, requires a special majority. What is special majority? I will write it at least. This is important. At least 2/3 members. right? So that is called the special majority. Fine. Then here in this particular case, if you consider this special majority, right? So irrespective of the fact whether there are vacancies or absentees, right? So in any case, you have to have 2/3. That is right. So in this particular case, it is important. And as I said, in certain cases or in certain amendments dealing with the federal provisions, that is by states of the constitution, also need to be ratified by the legislatures, right? Or at least half of the states additionally. That is called that can be known as the third kind of. I will be writing that point. Third kind of amendment. So next point comes in this is assent of the President of India. Assent of, okay.
The quality is okay, sir. There is no problem in the quality, sir.
Yes, I know it, but what I feel there
Sir,
might be some
reflection. Okay.
darkness and a sort of reflection. Right. Anyway, hold on. Now I think it's clear, right? Yes. Okay, fine. So, okay, thank you, Samin. So, assent of President of India. Once bill get pass, the next case is assent of the President of India. So, once all other stages have been completed, an amendment is bound to receive the assent of the President of India. Right? What here is necessary? Amendment bound to receive the assent of President. Actually, the President. Right. So this would be the thing. Fine. Now, once you send this bill to the President has to give his assent to the constitutional amendment bills, right? So after the assent of the President, the bill becomes an act and the Constitution stands amended, right? So after, yes, after, exactly. So how many days it requires? Around 17 days it get, right? So after uh, assent of the president, the bill becomes an act, right? And the constitution stands amended. That means amendment is done, right? So in some of the bills, rather in the constitutional amendment bill, right? Uh, if you in case of constitutional amendment bill, there is no provision of joint sitting of both the houses. So provision of joint sitting, if you have a question, right? So sometimes it can be asked of both houses of the parliament. आहे का? नहीं. So uh, simply you can have the majority by both the houses separately, right? Then next point comes in here is about types of amendment. Types of amendment. Now, what are these? So if you consider the Indian Constitution can be amended by the three different ways, right? So first is amendment by simple majority. Simple majority, right? Then second is amendment by special majority. Amendment by special majority. And third is amendment by special majority of the parliament. Right? Okay, I will write of parliament in each of these points. It is right of the parliament and the ratification is the word, right? Ratification of half of the state legislatures, right? So ratification by half of the uh, legislature states. Ratification is agreement or making it officially valid, right? So the government, the state governments or the state legislature must also agree to be to make it a valid, right? So that is these are the three different things which are important. Now, if you consider in this particular case, the Article 368 is providing two types of amendments, right? I guess Ganesh, I think I have no problem about the anyway. So I was talking about uh, the ratification, right? Sorry, the Article 368 is providing two types of amendments, right? That are by the special majority of parliament and through the ratification of half of the states by the simple majority, right? And but in some of other articles or some other articles provides the amendment of certain provisions of the constitution by simply a simple majority of the parliament, right? So if you consider for that a majority of majority of the members of each house present and vote, right? That is called the simple majority, similar to the ordinary legislative process. जे विधानसभेमध्ये पण घडतं. So notably, these amendments are not deemed to be the amendments of the Constitution for the purposes of Article 368. So for what I said, right? All these three, these are the three different amendments, and by 368, you can consider these two are about 368, but by some of the other articles, you can go with this one, right? So some other, and therefore it is called simply, right? In this case, simple voting, if you consider, right, is being done, and that is